Hello, folks. Welcome to Between Awesome and Disaster. This is your host, Will Carey. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you being here as always, and I hope that you're staying safe and staying inside as much as possible as the efforts to continue to flatten the curve, to me, are proving more and more vital by the day. As I am recording this, we are in the middle of, I would say, 2.5 weeks and a few days into being remote and staying inside. When you're listening to this, we will be at 3.5 weeks. So I'm still hanging in there, and part of the reason that I'm hanging in is because I'm still lucky enough that I'm able to continue to make podcasts. And this particular one is one I am over the moon excited about, because my guest on the show today is Tom May. Tom May is one of the singers and guitarists in the punk rock band The Menzingers. If you are not familiar with The Menzingers, you should get yourself acquainted with their music, because they are spectacular. They are one of my favorite bands. And I first became aware of them when they opened for Anti-Flag at the Bell House. I saw them live in 2010. So it was like right when I moved to New York City, and I was living in Sunset Park, Brooklyn at the time, which is about 40 blocks away, or a couple stops on the R train from the Bell House. And this was still before, even to get super hipstery, this was still even before like their breakthrough album on Epitaph Records, On the Impossible Past, came out. And I was just blown away by how great their songs were, how great the live show was. And their newest album, which came out in October 2019, which feels like ages ago, is called Hello Exile. And it is, in my opinion, maybe their best record. I know that's a controversial statement, but I love their most recent album. I really, really enjoyed it. So if you haven't familiar, Hello Exile is available wherever you get your music. And Tom and I had a really great chat about how the band is managing in the midst of not being able to tour currently due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We also had a great chat about their beginnings in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and then later on in Philadelphia, as well as what their plans are. There's some excellent guitar talk. So if you play guitar or are interested in like recording anything like that, I feel like there's a lot of really great stuff that you can glean from this conversation. And Tom is just a very chill, down-to-earth dude, which I'm finding luckily all of my heroes that I've met, talking to all my punk rock heroes and all of the musicians that I'm fans of, have been very cool people. So it was really great to get to talk with Tom on this show. And I hope you guys enjoy it. If anybody here is a fan of the Menzingers, thank you for taking the time to listen to this. If you want to share this show with other people, we are available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Stitcher, and Spotify. And if you haven't, you can also listen to my appearance on a podcast called On the Impossible Pod, which is done by my friend Cheska, where she breaks down and analyzes each song on the Impossible Past. And you can listen to me on the episode for A Burn After Writing, which is Tom and I would discuss a little bit during this podcast. And this was just a really wonderful conversation, and I'm excited to share it with you guys. So thank you guys again for listening, and let's go to my chat with Tom May of the Menzingers. All right, excellent. I can hear you. I can hear you as well. Thank you so much for talking to me, Tom. I really appreciate it. How are you faring amidst the state of the world at this moment?
You know, I got to say, all things considered, pretty damn well, pretty damn good. How about you? How you holding up?
I'm doing all right. I've been I've been working remotely since the 12th, and have been doing a show, a podcast for every day since then. So I've been doing what I can to keep the routine going.
Nice. Hell yeah. Seems like that's one of the things you could really cling on to in a complete uproot situation like this is a routine like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask you because before we talked, I know the band was going to be on tour in Australia. Were you in Australia when COVID hit and when the decision kind of realized that you had to get home?
Yeah, so we landed we left for Australia on March 8th. So it had already been in Washington, I believe, at that time. And we were kind of it was pretty wild because if we had a conversation with our booking agent and with our manager as to whether or not we were going to go to Australia on that Friday the 6th. I think that if we or that Saturday, if we had the discussion the next day, we would not have gone. And if we had the discussion the day before that, we definitely would have went. I think what happened was we were in Europe as well in February.
Mm-hmm.
So when it first came to Germany and when it first came to Italy, we were there, and it was a little bit different in the media over there. We started to, I gotta say, that just take it back a little bit. In February, the first inkling that I got regarding the severity or the potential severity, actually, of the situation was there's this podcaster and author I really like named Tim Ferriss, and he had put in one of his emails this article written by this economist statistician reporter that basically said that the numbers that were coming out of China seemed like they weren't correct, and then it was actually going to be more overblown. And then there was some Redditor that had correctly predicted what China's infection rates were going to come out based off of like a quadratic formula instead of a qualitative formula. I don't fully understand that. I try to get my brother to help me, but whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
we're over there and we're talking shit, and it comes to, and we're like, damn, this seems like it's a little weird. This guy that I respect is talking about how he's not going to go anywhere for 4 weeks, and I was like, this is fucking weird. And then we got back to the States, and we continued to follow some of those epidemiologists and virologists on Twitter and shit like that, and they're saying something completely different than what our media was saying, and obviously what our president was saying, and what the fucking like Fox News and shit like that was saying. So we
Yeah.
watched it. We watched the two viewpoints kind of start to converge towards each other right when we were leaving for Australia. And then when we were on the phone to talk about whether or not we were going to go to the people who work with Australia, we're like, no, it's just a Rupert Murdoch owned media scare, fear mongering to get us all, to buy more newspapers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and we got there every single day. It just escalated, and then we had to cut the tour short to come home.
Uh-huh. And I'm sorry that you guys didn't get to play New Zealand because I know just from like my experience with the Menzingers fandom that Australia loves you guys. So I imagine the passion is there as well. And then especially for a band like yours that is so identified with like heavy nonstop touring and absolutely killer live shows, like that's the majority of what you're known for. And then to not be able to do that, is there any kind of thought, like every comedian I know is now live streaming like a crazy person? Are you guys like having any conversations about how you're adapting during this time when you're not able to travel?
Yeah, first off, thanks for those compliments in there, man. That's great. And yeah, it was just definitely a huge bummer that we couldn't go to New Zealand. Our bass player Eric, his wife is actually from New Zealand, and we were going to get to meet her family for the first time. He clearly met them before, but we have some friends that we've been talking to there for many years that we've yet to see in person, and we were really excited to go. And we were bummed that we had to cancel it, but it was really good that we canceled it on that day because the next day, I believe it was, New Zealand announced a 14-day self-quarantine mandate for all international travelers. So we would have been stuck in New Zealand for 2 weeks, and we would have been just getting home
Mm-hmm.
now. We would have just been getting home like yesterday. So it was good that it feels like a fucking decade ago. But yeah, and as far as the live streaming stuff, we were making a joke that it seems like it's getting a little, it's very cynical, getting a little kumbaya kind of out there with the amount of acoustic live streams that are going. But it is, even with that said, we watch them. I mean, I watch my friends playing acoustic on Instagram Live and Facebook and stuff every day. And I've gone to, quote unquote, gone to some of these virtual shows. And, we're took some time to get used to the time zone switch and to get plans in place to see what we're going to do for any shows that have been postponed and which shows are going to get postponed. So we've kind of been laying low, but we are working on, new music and playing and keeping in close touch with each other. And we have some shit that we got worked out that we're going to be doing online soon.
Well, that's very exciting. I'd be very eager to hear that. Yeah, if there's anything that I think is really kind of scary and odd to think about is just there's no idea how long this thing is going to last. Like it could be done in a couple months, it could go away and then come back in the fall. like I was supposed to get I was actually supposed to get married next month, and we've had to move it because the state that New York is in, like we actually don't know if legally the venues are going to be open, and it just doesn't feel like safe to get a bunch of people close together, even like in late May.
Man, I'm so sorry to hear that. That fucking sucks, dude. Hopefully there'll be a silver lining in that you get to postpone it without too much of a hitch. But yeah, especially as mentioned, I don't know for anybody not listening, you are in New York, and today I feel like in this situation things are moving so quickly that I should mention that it is Wednesday, April 1st, the time of
Yes.
you of us saying that, because who knows what is going to change in the next couple days. But it seems like a responsible decision on your part to fucking move it. Good on you guys.
Yeah, I think I know it as I feel mostly bad for my fiance because she's put so much like work and planning into this, and our invitations looked so good. Like we had like little, they looked like plane tickets. She designed everything. I know that when it actually does happen, that it's going to be the biggest party of the year. And the other thing we were joking about is that I always like you think about like like your grandparents or something that would tell you about like the war or like this the Spanish flu, and now I'm gonna have those stories to be like, well, your grandmother and I we were supposed to get married, and then the corona hit.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely. That's except your grandkids or whomever will be able to just kind of probably find your Instagram post from the time and be able to see that. It's pretty fucking weird.
Oh, exactly. Is just be like, Grandpa, what was Instagram? This seems like so old timey hashtags. It doesn't just read your thoughts automatically. Um,
We're not
I'm
all plugged into one hive.
exactly. It's super exciting to hear that you guys are going to be working on some new music because I wanted to tell you, I think I absolutely loved. I love the new album. Hello Exile is such an amazing record. I think, and I don't know if you'll feel this way when I think about like the essence of everything that the Menzingers is. I feel like Hello Exile is like a absolutely like pitch perfect combination of all of the different elements of the band, and I really really enjoyed it. So thank you for that great record. And
Hell yeah, thanks, man. We tried our hardest, and I think that it worked out well. I mean, we like it. We usually we always write songs that we think that um, we write the songs that we want to play and that we want to listen to. And that it's kind of hard as we get older and was become a bigger band. We always have to keep in mind, and because of making something like it would be stupid otherwise, keep in mind what our listeners are going to like or expect or want or how they react, and it's kind of been an interesting balance between what we want to do and what we think will help and how they inform each other. And it's really good to hear that you like it.
oh, at 100%. The reason this is the thing I agreed and I'll agree with this YouTube commenter. Someone wrote on the Anna music video that I don't know Anna, but I miss her, and that's kind of how I felt when I first saw that video. And I was reading, I was trying to pick up on some of kind of like the approach to the new record. I before I did comedy, I play in bands, and I play in a band right now. I'm curious how has your approach to songwriting evolved over the course of the band? Because it seems like and feeling listening to the newest record, I felt a lot of like there is a lot of like mastery around the craft of putting a song together. So I was curious how that process has changed for you.
Probably the biggest change that we've experienced has been the intention behind the songwriting. And I'm not saying the motivation, I'm saying just the intention. Like we were writing songs before that were just so sporadic. It was very kind of like flying off of whatever energy at the moment, or maybe a subconscious emulation of the things we were listening to. And we didn't really take time to think about what a song is. We certainly didn't take time to read about it or try to educate ourselves further. And then we realized that there is as we've gotten older and as we've done it more, and as you do anything more, hopefully in the examined existence, we started to pay attention to what exactly the song was, and it could change directions, and it could reveal it as it went on, or maybe it was just like a self-fulfilling prophecy in a lot of respects. But I think that just paying attention and actually looking at what we're doing and being like, where is this song going to go? and why was kind of a big evolution. And then that also another big influence and a big change as far as songwriting goes has been just listening to more types of music from other eras and from other people, and songs in other languages and everything, to just kind of try to really see what it is that we're doing, and then kind of build it our own way back after that.
Totally. Are there any songs that that started out drastically different from the way that they ended up sounding on the finished versions?
You know, almost every one, probably. Actually, it's probably like a 50-50. I'm just going to guess on that. But some of the songs we have done in a couple of days, and there is that romantic notion that maybe the greatest things come in a flash of inspiration and they get done that way. But for us, it's not necessarily the case. Some of like on the newest record, Farewell Youth, I believe we wrote the beginning of the song from its first fruition of like guitar lines and shit to everything arranged and lyrics written in like 48 hours or something like that. So it was a very, very quick thing. And then a song like Last to Know had so many iterations and so many incarnations as it went on that it took a complete turn. Yeah, but there's some on there, man. I'm trying to think of one. Oh, the song Portland was one that just we beat the shit out of for months, and then wrangled it into submission when we got into the studio, and just we couldn't figure out exactly what to do with it, and that changed from like that was at one point a very fast, kind of a heavy punk song, and then there was like a folky iteration of it, and then it ended up on this like I don't know whatever like '90s rock thing or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's a quite a journey with a lot of them, and sometimes they never get there, and that's when it becomes like a B-side, or you just don't record it, that kind of situation. But yeah, it's definitely some weird journeys that the songs have taken.
That's fascinating to hear you guys talk about that. But like talking about like how some of this stuff is like and bringing in like your outside influence. I feel like specifically with Hello Exile, I feel like there is this really great melding of like your punk influences with like what I would call like your more like heartland rock or like singer songwriter kind of influences. Um, I imagine that you like a lot of that stuff as well. Like there's a real like a Springsteen kind of vibe to a lot of the songs that I really picked up on and enjoyed on Hello Exile.
Nice. Yeah, thanks, man. I think that some of that even we were making a joke before we were starting about technical difficulties, that some of that is brought on by that situation and the tools that you have at your disposal. So this time was the first time we started using in-ear monitors, like maybe a year or two ago, or a couple years ago, or some of us started, and
Mm-hmm.
we all kind of adapted it. And that was for anybody who doesn't know, that is you have those big speakers in the front of the stage, and you can hear your vocals or your guitar back blasting through them, so that because you're standing behind the speakers that are faced out into the crowd. So you could get in-ear monitors where you have molds of your actual ear canal, the beginning of your ear canal, and there's little earpieces with speakers in them, and then you get that fed back into your ears, so you can really hear the rigid, nuanced things of what everybody's doing. So we were able to
Mm-hmm.
take that live thing and bring it into our practice space, and then when we were writing, and we were writing the four of us in a room, we were for the first time ever actually able to completely hear each other. So I think what started out with I think there's even Ian Mackay might talk about this. Somebody read it, said in one of their books, but it's like the reason that punk was the way it was everyone was trying to compete over each other, or you're screaming because, and at least for us it was the case, we were screaming the lyrics at practice and what we were writing, because that was the only way you could hear it, because there's just a 12-inch speaker over all these guitars, and the
Mm-hmm.
drums just banging and banging. And for this time we were able to actually sit there and listen to it, and this brought on new conversations and new um, workarounds to old problems, and new kind of like, when you hear somebody do something, you can be like, yo, that's fucking sick, do that again. And I think that development itself kind of made us be a little bit more mindful about what we were playing, and it also had us turn down a little bit because we didn't have to turn up so much. And we're getting old. But
Right.
as
Right.
far as you mentioned the actual influences, Bruce Springsteen was one that you mentioned. That was one of the things that was on the radio constantly when we were kind of growing up, and I think that some of those emotional attachments um, that we have to certain sounds and ideas permeate later, and that's what we're trying to reach and convey some of those same thoughts. And those are some big influences for me. I went down a really dark I guess it got dark, Warren Zevon rabbit hole before this record. So there's not
Oh
really too
wow.
much, I think, influence on the surface that you can see, or any kind of like the absurdist situations, or that kind of like observational storytelling, or that swing instrumentation kind of shit. But it was definitely a big one for me when we were rolling into it.
Yeah, I can see that. Like thinking about some of like the lyrical twitch, kind of like the lyrical turns of phrase on like a song like Strawberry Mansion or last last to know. Yeah, that kind of makes sense to me because I found him like his lyric Warren Zevon's lyrics, not unlike like your storytelling kind of singer songwriters, are like, they have broad appeal, but then there's like my friend who's into like making craft beer and plays banjo would be like, well, this is a reference to this novel, which is, and he's referencing this historical event. uh,
Yeah, for sure. A little Easter eggs and some layers to some of the shit.
Absolutely, I love that kind of stuff. Can you tell me, Tom, the first song you remember hearing that made you like turn your head and go, "What is that?" Because I have several like moments like that in my music fandom, and I'm curious what that was for you.
Yeah, man. I think there's a lot of those. I immediately went chronological, and I was trying to think of some of the earliest ones. And besides, like when you first hear music, I guess it's in the car. At least for people in our generation, it was in the car on radio, or it was something that our family played, or at like whatever church or school or something like that. For me, some of the earliest music I listened to was like some of the Irish folk music that my grandfather would play, and that him and his friends would play. That was, having that as a community or as a group activity where everybody was real stoked. And looking back now, I realized everybody was drunk, but everybody's real like having a really good time, and it was very close knit, emotionally safe place to be, and that's kind of where I associated a lot of that. And as far as like getting into more modern and pop music and recorded music and all that, I remember hearing on like a Discman, somebody playing a burned copy of Outcome. My best friend Nick had a burned copy of Outcome the Wolves that his brother had made by Rancid, and I remember listening to that and walking home from school, and we would pass the headphones back and forth to take and like re-listen to the same song over and over again. I remember the energy and the melodies and just like the attitude coming from that really just struck so deeply with me and where I was in life, and becoming a person and becoming a man and having all this like energy to want to skateboard and break things and all the stereotypical shit that you want to do when you're like 13.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember that really kind of hitting home and leaving a mark forever. I must have listened to that and the CD was out of order, which is pretty funny because then when I eventually got a copy of Outcome the Wolves, probably like 5 years later, all of the songs were not in the sequence that I had learned them in, because somebody had downloaded it from like, I don't know, Napster or something at the time.
Right. Yeah, that record's awesome. I remember being I think I got into Rancid late. I think I remember cuz my introduction to punk rock was Blink 182. So I was like, "Oh, Blink 182, this is what punk rock sounds like." And then all of my like real punk friends would be like, "Actually, you need to listen to to Rancid." And
Yeah.
I think I ended up getting Indestructible first. That was like the first time cuz I'm from like a really rural part of Maryland.
Mhm.
So a lot of times when the bands were getting like their first like good distribution deals, that was the first album I would get because that was the first one in Target or Walmart. So I think it was Indestructible. But then I would go back and I found Let's Go and Out Come the Walls. Yeah, that record is still so good. Like so much great stuff on that.
Yeah, man, it's incredible, and it's funny you meant that. I think right before that, maybe a year before that, was I heard like Korn and bands like that on the radio, and my friend's older brother, the same guy,
Hmm.
had listened to that, and I think yeah, hearing that angry guitar music was really the first time that I turned my head, as you phrased it. I was like, "The is that? Need more of that."
Yeah. Oh yeah. Exactly. Everyone I know who gets into punk is like, "What's that? Need more." Like the
Yeah.
first time I heard like like palm muting or like or just like a skank beat like that top to pop to pop to pop to pop. I was like, never. That doesn't sound like the Motown my mom's playing.
Yeah,
Which I
exactly.
still love all of that stuff too. Okay, so and that was like when you were like 13, you discovered Rancid?
Yeah, 13 or 14, and before that was like Corn and Green Day. Green Day
Mm,
was a big one that kind of they all concurrently kind of came into my life around the same, what probably felt like a really long time, but was probably really like 6 months.
totally. And then so you're discovering this, and then I'm curious about if there was any kind of local scene in Scranton, because I kind of relate to I guess I sort of relate to like a smaller city, and like the youth finds like a way to entertain themselves. And I'm curious if Scranton has something had that kind of vibe as well.
Yeah, there's a big punk scene in Scranton, and that was part of the what solidified the entire thing in my bones was that we, you'd watch movies with punk stuff in it, and I would hear my uncle told me a story about going to see, I think it was the Plasmatics on at the West Side Hotel in West Scranton back in the '80s, and having like the police come and just like riots and all that shit, and just hearing all these stories and watching, trying to get our hands on VHS tapes and watching SLC Punk and just seeing the culture that it was portrayed that way, and how much raw energy and kind of like reversion away from what we didn't want. It was like a way to rebel. Then we started going to like the local shows. There was a place called Cafe del Sol, and I remember going to, and one of the first shows we ever went there, somebody got put through a jukebox, and it was like, this is the craziest shit that I've ever seen. There was just fights, and there was all these different groups, like hardcore kids, and then there was like skinheads, and it was just fucking crazy. So yeah, that started, and then there was the whole notion of kind of DIY. So we
Mm-hmm.
had a show in the first band that I ever played in. We probably only had a couple chords to the song, or one song, or two songs, but we got a church basement to let us have a show in the basement.
Yeah, I remember the
Do that.
Yeah, I've gone to my fair share of church basement shows, and like uh the local armory was a place that local bands would do shows a lot. Those weren't
Sounds about
always
right.
yeah, those weren't always as fun because security was very tense at those. So anytime you started having fun, they would like break it up immediately. A
Yeah,
couple like the local like community centers. I don't think we had VFW halls, but we definitely would have done shows there. Um,
sure. Yeah, any event space we had shows at, we usually be one or two, and then they would not let us do any more. But there were also a couple local punk clubs. So there was Cafe del Sol, there was Cafe Metropolis. We used to be able to take the bus down to Wilkes-Barre and get a ride down there to go see shows, and that was a place dedicated to a space dedicated for this kind of independent music. So you'd have your indie shows, your punk shows, your hardcore shows, and it really was, you'd meet people through that at other schools, and there were a lot of older kids, and then you get them to buy you beer. Like, it was very much a thriving punk rock scene that we also were integral in making, because we learned from the older kids that you did it. So you started your own band. It didn't matter. And that was a really cool and really empowering experience.
Oh, absolutely. It's so important to learn, especially if I think probably in life in general, but and then also in I think creative fields is to learn that you can't wait for people to like ask for stuff or give you stuff. You just kind of have to make it because otherwise you'll just explode. That's my thought anyway.
Yeah, totally. Oftentimes you're waiting for an authority or a manual or, a mentor or whatever, and those things don't necessarily exist. They can be great, and as I get older, I like, I want for them. I'm like, damn, give me every YouTube how-to video I could get. But back then, before the advent of like that mass sharing of information, even when you wanted to learn something like how to record a band, you kind of just had to go find someone, or you just had to learn through trial and error.
Yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I'm just realizing, well, I've got all this time, and I've got an audio interface and a microphone, and TuneTrack's having a sale on Easy Mix. Maybe I could do something while I can't leave the house.
There you go.
I think there's going to be I feel like there'll be a few quarantine related album stories by the time this is all over.
Yeah, from talking to a lot of my musician friends, there's already stuff going on. It's gonna be cool. There's gonna be this. There's gonna be Generation C, the Corona babies. All these couples fucking locked up for a couple weeks.
Yeah, there's going to be like two sides. I think there's going to be an entire C generation, and then there's going to be a lot of like like divorce like acoustic albums like released under pseudonyms?
Oh
Like
yeah, I've been teasing my lawyer friend that she can, bank on starting her own practice doing just Corona divorces in the next couple months.
the sad thing is I think that's 100% true. And like going to so like traveling around like the Wilkes-Barre Scranton area, is this how you meet Greg and the rest of the band?
Yeah, so Joe, the drummer, his great aunt was best friends with my grandmother. They both had grown up in West Scranton, and I'd known him and his brothers when we were like, oh man, a couple, months old, and would see them every couple of months as we got older. And then he played in another band that was a little bit older that we used to go see all the time, in a ska band. So then I joined a band with Joe and our friend Curtis, and then Eric eventually joined the band. So our high school band was us four, and it
Mm-hmm.
was Joe and Eric and myself, and Greg played in a band with my brother. And then the year that we graduated high school, we ended up starting a band with Greg, and that was pretty much how we met. Greg was from like, I don't know, 20 minutes or a half hour north of Scranton, from a place called Lake Ariel. Really, really beautiful and interesting place, and that's how we met up. We just kept playing.
Awesome. So the Menzingers is your high school band that's now your career. That's super cool.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking awesome.
That's that's so cool. And so you guys are so you're playing around like the Wilkes-Barre Scranton area. And how long are you guys a band before you start like recording and like putting out albums like your first couple of albums that still had the ska influences?
Yeah, so we started in 2005, and I think we released our first full-length record on our label, Go Kart Records, in 2008 or
Mm-hmm.
2007. I'd have to check that. But yeah, we had the experience from our high school bands and from having some equipment around that we would, record ourselves. And we recorded a demo with this guy, Bob, B-O-B.
Mm-hmm.
Dude's super fucking cool. I should hit him up, man. I wonder what he's up to these days. That guy really helped put us on a cool path, or on a real good path, and taught us a lot about music. Yeah, we just really, we worked. Some of us were going to school, and we were living in Scranton at the time until we moved to Philadelphia in 2008. So we had been in Scranton. We recorded that record in New York. So it kind of all just happened immediately, but we really, because that's all we really wanted, I think, is the kind of what we take away from that, is that all four of us, and the reason that our high school band made it is because all four of us just really wanted to play in a band, and we would do anything and make any sacrifice that we could conceive of to make it happen. So we kind of just, went out the gate swinging with that. And then, but as you can imagine, as a bunch of like 17, 18-year-olds, we didn't really have um, we didn't have any money, first off, and we also didn't have like the organization abilities or the kind of like connections, or I mean, couldn't even drink at the bar. So we kind of just relied on the people from Go Kart, like Greg and Jesse Cannon and them, to kind of guide us towards that, and that's where we ended up. And then we realized that Scranton wasn't. We were playing in Philly, we were playing in New York and Philly and Connecticut and Pittsburgh and all the places that you can drive to from Scranton, and we realized that we would be better off if we moved to Philadelphia. Plus, things at home got too hot. It was like can't be around all of these old circumstances and relationships and people and stuff. So we moved to Philly to start.
Kind of like a fresh
Uh,
start.
yeah, kind of like a fresh start, or kind of like moving forward. And then we moved there in 2008, and then the housing crisis happened that fall. So we kind of just fell. It was a good thing and a bad thing. It was a bad thing in that it was impossible to have any cash, really. And it
Mm-hmm.
was hard to get work, and it was expensive to live. But it was good because then that's when all the DIY venue explosions happened in Philadelphia.
Yeah, people just kind of found a way. Um, and what was it? Oh, I wanted to ask, what is something early on that do you remember anything that Bob taught you early on?
Yeah. Actually, he would kind of allow us to step outside of, and we went way far outside of the purview of what we had going on instrumentally and technically. So we had two guitars, bass, drums, two vocals, and then we added in. We were like, well, we could stop and punch this part. We can add in synthesizers if you want. You can shape it any way you want to. You can sing really fast like a rap style. You can go slower. You can add harmonies here. So he really kind of shaped that out for us. And he also showed us what it was like to be more excellent when it came to recording. Like you had to pay more attention to the things aren't just good enough. You know, you can't just like play it and be like, oh, well, that was good enough. And it's really taught us to be more precise and rigid, and kind of helped us build our discipline that way.
Right on. That's very important. Like because like I feel like when I went from like doing live shows to like being in the studio, I there was a couple times where I was like, do I even know how to do this anymore? I had like completely forgotten. Like it was like what I can't count anymore. I don't know how to play guitar is like a whole thing.
Yeah,
Um,
you'll definitely. Did I write this and I can't play it because it's actually not right, and like that kind of shit.
exactly. And so in Philadelphia, my knowledge of Philadelphia is, um, I've been there a couple of times. I've been there a couple of times now, and the only real venue I'm familiar with is the Electric Factory. I drove and saw Thursday and Rise Against there, in like, oh man, this is like 15 years ago. God, getting old. So, but around the time of like the housing crisis, out of that emerges this really thriving like DIY scene.
Yeah, it's enormous. I think of them as one having to do with the other because there was just so much open commercial space and so many people moving into houses that with a lot of people in the house. So instead of you couldn't afford to live with just two or three people, so you had five, six, seven roommates. Um, Everybody just kind of slammed in, be like, yeah, of course, every day is a party already. When we're just cooking dinner, let's have a show, and then you'd have a show in the living room, or a show in the kitchen, a show in the basement. Um, and yeah, there's like there's so many venues. I'm drawing a quick blank, but each house venue would have its own name. You had breakfast and dessert, and Ava House, which was run by our friends from Scranton, and it was an open plan concept, second floor above a garage that they put in some not fully connected to the roof partitions for people's rooms. And there was a whole lot of that going on. That, and in New York, there was a lot of places like 538 Johnson and Suburbia, and a lot of those kind of, you know, venues that we look back with great romance now existed in that time frame and moment. And in Philadelphia, you have so many different neighborhoods that each neighborhood would have a bunch of shows every night. So there was every single night there was a show to go to
Mm-hmm.
in our world from 2008 to 2012 or whatever.
Oh, that sounds so exciting. I remember I got very nostalgic for a place in New York called the Greenpoint Gallery that my close friends now, they're married now, and they met and fell in love while they were living in this like multi-tiered like apartment slash like film studio slash concert venue slash a million art installation, like a million different things, like just a lot of people like chunked it close, like put in an enclosed space, and you got to create something.
Yeah, like there's so many places like that. That sounds right up our alley.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, it's pretty cool. The guy Sean's like a classic like New York character. Like we were in a zombie short film years ago, and like we would like walk around DC, and he's like dressed in like full zombie makeup, and I'm his manager effectively, and like just freaking people out on the street. Like I don't know if I could get back into doing that now, but it's a very exciting time. And and out of this scene, is this how Red Scare finds you? Because you were on Red Scare initially before you were on Epitaph.
Yeah, so the first thing we did for Red Scare was an EP called Hold On Dodge. I think it came out in 2000. It came out in 2009 or 2010,
Mm-hmm.
and we did that from meeting Brendan Kelly of the Lawrence Arms. Got Toby, who's now a lifelong friend, um, the fine purveyor of Red Scare Industries, came to see us at the fest. I think it was the second year that we played the fest, and we had an overwhelming response. So fest it's a punk festival in Gainesville, Florida, every October. So the university that's there has a big football game against a university in Georgia, and the teams meet halfway, and it's only like a 2-hour drive or something. So all the college kids from Gainesville leave, and that's when the fest comes in and kind of takes over, 7, 8 venues or more than that in downtown Gainesville. And it's just such a powerful meeting of everyone that you'd meet all over the country from touring and all kinds of bands, and that would like make or not break bands, but it would make a lot of bands. In that there'd be buzz, and then everybody would be like, "Well, I got to go to this tiny ass venue and see this band at 3 o'clock in the morning." And something that really happened to us. We got pushed by, excuse me, the organizers and some of the bigger bands that were playing. And then when we had a show, it was sold out and slammed full of people, and Red Scare came and saw us, and that was how we met up with them. And then they had us put out an EP, which was kind of like
Mm-hmm.
a testing the waters with them. And then we put out a full length that we recorded in Chicago at Atlas Studios. That was Chamberlain Waits, and that was how we got on Red Scare.
Yes, I think that's when I saw you around this time because and I do apologize that I've not been to a show recently. Life has gotten in the way several times every time you're through the New York area, but I think I remember seeing you at the Bell House with Anti-Flag, and I think 2010, and this is when you do the thing. I was like, oh, I guess I should see who the opening bands are, and I was like, and I think I heard I Was Born. I was like, oh, this is great. Can't wait to see these guys open. So I think this was even before what I guess is often described as your breakthrough, which is On the Impossible Past. Uh, but that was a great show. I don't know if you remember that tour that well still, but
Yeah, man, I remember that show specifically. We played with there was a band on the, is it called the Internationals or something like that? I forget. And the guy had these wild like leopard print tight pants. I forget what band that was, but they were sick. And yeah, we played at there at that was a one-off show. It was a short tour that popped into Canada, I think, with Anti-Flag. And yeah, that was before we recorded On the Impossible Past. That was the record that came out after Chamberlain Waits. That was awesome. You were at that show. I remember that, not so vividly, but yeah.
yeah, I remember that because my experience of that was I think I didn't live too far away from the Bell House. Like if the Bell House is like at 7th Street and 3rd Avenue in Brooklyn, I was at like 45th Street and 5th Avenue in Brooklyn. And I think I had been in New York City for maybe 4 months at this point, and I was like broke, unemployed, and then like not having a great go of it at the time. And I was like, oh, I'll go to the show, and my friend who I go to tons of I've been seeing Anti-Flag with her for like since we were in college, and we both live in New York now, and just having a really really great time. And so how does it come from? So you're on this tour, and then On the Impossible Past was Epitaph, your first release on Epitaph.
It was, yeah. I should write all this shit down so I have a nice framework and I can just spit out the dates and know exactly what I'm going on. Because right now it feels sometimes it's kind of like a blurred together, like, end of season 3, True Detective. I don't know where I am, kind of shit. But so that was our first release on Epitaph, was On the Impossible Past, and that was we had a collection of demos which ended up becoming a release called On the Possible Past. But we had those, and we sent them to Epitaph after they had expressed interest to at the time we started working with our manager, Tim. So Tim Zahodsky is this guy. He played in One Dead, Three Wounded in Philly. He's an old hardcore dude. Well, he's not so old. He's our age. But he's an incredible human being, and he's been an essential part of everything that we've done. So he's the fucking best. And Epitaph had reached out through him to us, and we sent them all the demos that we had been working on, which is funny. I don't think I ever mentioned this, but I think we took like a couple $100 from Toby at Red Scare to like work on these songs that ended up becoming On the Impossible Past. We bought pizza and weed and maybe like a microphone. But we made all those, and then we sent them over to Epitaph, and they flew us out. They had a guy pick us up with our name, with one of our names on a placard. It was like this wild ass Russian dude in a suit. And we got into this big black SUV. We'd never flown it. I think a couple of us had never even flown anywhere before. And we got out, and they took us to Epitaph's headquarters, which is this really fucking cool office building. It's just, it's a really, really neat place to be. It's inside of an old, I think it was like a train station where they unloaded like crops and shit like that. But we get there, and then they have a barbecue in the yard and or in the parking lot. And Brett Gerwitz, one of our heroes, just sits out there, smokes cigars with us while we're drinking beer, and tells us stories from our favorite bands. It was really fucking cool. And then we immediately signed Epitaph, and we put out On the Impossible Past. That night was great because we were getting taken out, and we had heard from so many people. It was like, drink, use their bill, like they got an expense account or whatever that means. So we ended up running up, hundreds of dollars worth of just Pabsts and shit like that at a bar, and that was a pretty funny story with some of the coolest people that were there. And Matt, who's still there now, is their GM now, is one of the guys that took us out. They've been so good to us and so kind, and they helped us out of so many jams, and they've just been they're fucking amazing. When tours and shows started to get canceled, they actually sent us this massive. They sent all their bands this massive document that was like a living document that had all of the best ways to live stream, all the technical problems you can overcome, all of the like best approaches and things to do that, just to try to get everybody to help out. And it was just a reminder of what an incredible asset and cool group of people they are.
Yeah, I've always like viewed them as like one of like the seminal like artists first, like all like music, and for them to still be relevant after I guess like 40 years now just blows my mind. Also makes me like, oh my god, is time is catching up with me. That's so cool. That reminds me of like every time my fiance is the director of communications for a union, and I had I had a wild time at a conference in Las Vegas with them because those folks go hard.
I'm sure.
I had a couple of kind of nerdy questions that I wanted to ask you specifically about songs from On the Impossible Past. I'm not sure if you're aware of the fact there's a podcast that exists called On the Impossible Pod that kind of breaks down and analyzes each song on that album. I'm not sure if you're aware.
Yeah, we
of this.
met them. Yeah, we met them in New York.
Yeah, so I was a guest on that podcast, and
sick.
And the song I did was Burn After Writing, which is me, and it might be because I listened to it like hundreds of times, like preparing preparing to talk about it. I specifically love the line, the opening line. Like to me, that's like the perfect like beginning of the set song where like I could every time I listen to it, I'm just picturing myself in the crowd just screaming the lyrics at you, like. Are the chords to that song some combination of E, B, and C and A? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah. Here, I'm gonna grab my guitar real quick. Let me take a look here.
Okay, totally. Yeah, I'll vamp. So Tom May is getting his guitar. I'm very excited.
All right. Okay, sorry to go grab that real quick.
Oh no. Yeah,
problem. First I gotta say, dude, thank you. There's nothing cooler than the fact that you would take that much time to analyze something that I made. That's pretty fucking cool. But yeah, the chords are, so we tuned, I think that, I'm not sure if that record is a half step down or not, but we started tuning a half step down. Actually, that record is in standard tuning. So yeah, we started playing a half step down after that. And we did it because we thought that the guitars would be heavier, which it does make the open E a lot heavier, but it would make everything easier to sing live. And now that we've gotten older, better, learned how to sing, took lessons, all that shit, we wish that we didn't go a half step down so that we'd be able to stay brighter and move it up a bit. But that's sure. Like basically you shape a power chord on the E on the A string, and then the next chord I just use my middle finger down on the
sixth string,
the D, or on the E string, and then drops down to the B after that.
Oh,
so you
cool.
and then just pick out the top parts of the power chord. So it's just an arpeggio like that, and then you slide your fingers down. So yeah.
Awesome. That's very cool. I felt proud of myself listening. I was like, oh, maybe I did learn something after all these years of playing guitar. 'Cause I just love that progression, like just is like so satisfying, like hearing that the way that song comes together and like switching between like you singing and then Greg singing, and then just the overall pace of it I love. I also wanted to ask something about the lyrics. Towards the end you say, was I wishing on satellites? Is that a Billy Bragg reference?
That is a Billy Bragg reference.
Excellent.
From, the song New England.
Yes. I feel awesome. I'm just confirming things I said on that podcast because I was curious. And I also thought that there was a Cure reference as well when you said, show me how you do that trick.
Yeah, that was I was dating somebody at the time, and our favorite song collectively was Just Like Heaven, which is a Cure song as well.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of a throwback to the first line of the song, the ending, the outro part. Those references are a throwback to the first line of the song. The melody that I stole from another song, kind of wrapping it together.
Uh-huh. Like those are the kind of like things that make me go that would make me that when I share your band with people who aren't familiar with punk or usually don't, I'm like, no, this listen to this song and then this and then you'll get it 100%.
Hell
Um
yeah, man! Thank you.
absolutely, dude. And the song Mexican Guitars, I'm guessing cuz I've played guitar for a long time as well. I
Hmm.
nerd out about this kind of stuff as well. My first I if I remember correctly, you started on like a Stratocaster, right? And I'm curious if that was the Mexican guitar referenced in that song.
Uh, I had a G&L, which is so I had a G&L Stratocaster, which is like a Fender associated company. So it stands for I think Gia and Leo Fender. It was his wife and
Mm-hmm.
him, and it was a Strat style guitar that I completely carved up and carved things into it and broke it. And our Nick Harris, our guitar tech, is gonna fix it for me. Wonder if he'll fix it during the quarantine. That'd be sick as fuck. But no, it is not the Mexican guitar that is referenced.
Uh gotcha. And as far as like gear goes, I won't ask you to delve too deeply into this, but um how has like your how has your approach to um the the songwriting process at all been changed based on like what guitar you're using? Do you find that you play differently or a different kind of or you play guitar a certain way based on what guitar you're using at the time?
Totally. Yeah, we do guitar switches live. I change the guitars in the studio to shape what we want the sound to go by, whether or not we want a belly kind of single note picked out thing. We would use a Stratocaster. On this last record, I used a Telecaster a lot because it has a sound closer to the Les Paul that I use live that is kind of, like a bigger, more sustain,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily bigger, but flatter, more sustain. It's got like a good breakup when I dig into it. And yeah, so when using electronic instruments like this and going for distortion as part of the shaping of the thing, the guitars, the gear that we pick, and the nuance of it totally changes the parts that we play. I don't know how much it changes necessarily what the songs start out and become, but it certainly does. I would say, and sometimes you feel a certain when you're this, like as you would imagine. I'm sure you feel the same way get when you do this long enough, and there's certain gears associated with certain types of playing or associated with some of your heroes, and I think that all of those subtle things can definitely inspire you.
Oh, 100%. I've got you can't see it. I'll show it to you at the end. But my dream bass guitar that I play right now is Mark Hoppus's signature. Uh,
Hell yeah, Eric used to have one of those, and I think it got stolen, but yeah, Eric had one of those when we. No, it wasn't his first bass that he had. We had another one. Yeah, dude, that's sick.
yeah, I just love the way that bass sounds. I only uh, and I think I might just start. I might get something like inexpensive to play shows with because I'm so paranoid about like walking home like late at night from practice in the streets and like getting jumped because I love the way that bass sounds. And I love, and you can let Eric know, I love his bass tone on all your albums. Like to me, like the Fender P bass is just the perfect bass guitar. I've tried everything else, and I always want to be playing a P bass. It just sounds
Yeah,
so great.
it's so fucking sick. And not to get too nerdy, but on the newest record that we used some stereo bass effects that we had never done before. There's a lot of room on some of the bass tracks, and that's a definitely departure from what we were used to. Kind of having the bass just kind of be a dry, hold all those frequencies together with the drums. And on this one, we went a little bit more attack. There's a little bit more cool stuff going on. We used some weird shit for it too. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's so cool. Um, is there any country you haven't played yet that you guys would like to play?
Everyone that we haven't played, that would be for me. I would really, really like to go to Greece, to Russia. Um, Romania would be really sick. There's everywhere in South America. We've only been to Brazil, and in Central America, we've only been to Costa Rica. I really, really, really want to go to Mexico. I've been there with my fiance, um, and it's fucking fantastic. And we met some of the people while we were there. We met some of the people who would be booking us while we were there, and that's definitely as I just cycled through those while talking. Mexico landed on there. That's the place we really need to go play next.
Yeah, I've never been to Mexico. That's on my list as well. My fiance and I have we've been fortunate enough to do a lot of like traveling through Southeast Asia. So I love it. I love it there. I actually did
Very
comedy.
cool.
I actually did a comedy in Tokyo around the time I was turning 30. And I just have you guys ever played like Asia or Japan or any place like that?
Yeah, we played Japan. We played 4 shows there 2 years ago, and it was so much fun. It was fucking awesome. I
Yeah.
can't wait to go back. Actually, so this tour that we just did that ended was meant to end in New Zealand that we canceled. My fiance and I were actually meeting up in Tokyo the day after that, so that got canned during this whole debacle as well. So, but
That
we
sucks.
really wanted to go back after we had gone there the first time as a band and have some friends over there now. Yeah, I can't, that fucking country is incredible.
Yeah. What was your experience of the crowds there? I always I'm curious in that because I've listened to like lots of interviews with pro wrestlers who like wrestle in the States and wrestle in Japan, and they always talk about how Japanese crowds are like very polite, like they won't like hoop and holler like most crowds. They'll just be like, "Oh, that was very good. Well done." I'm curious what your experience of playing like punk rock in Japan is like.
Yeah, there's certainly an element of the like collective cultural difference, or the different cultural difference as far as collectivism goes. We experience stuff like that in Eastern Europe or in regular Europe, where the crowds just kind of behave differently. You catch a different vibe. There's not as nowhere is as wild as America is. I think partially because of we're from here and that's what we play, but also I think that people in the world are just a little bit more reserved and not as like fucking repressed and insane as we are in the United States. But in Japan, you had your token Australian backpackers and some expatriates that were at the shows. It was cool to see them and stuff. But as far as the Japanese crowd was, they were a little bit more reserved. Maybe as I don't know if you use that word or not, but not necessarily. I think they kind of looked at what goes on in other countries and in the States while we're playing, and they emulated a lot of that. So there was a lot of there was some crowd surfing and things like that, but there was like everyone would start applauding at the same time and stop applauding at the same time, which they also had in common with Germans do that as well. So there was like a couple of little things like that that we noticed. We also the venues were smaller where we were playing in Japan, were not as popular, but they were so much better equipped than any venues in the States. So you had multiple soundproofing layers to the doors. Their sound equipment was leaps and bounds better than it would be for that size in the United States. And people at the venues took their jobs very seriously, and they were extremely welcoming. And yeah, it was super cool. And there it was the whole like body language difference is always interesting too. Like you'd meet some people that would be super big fans of the band, and they would bow like a full 45-degree angle at the hips, just like right over,
Uh huh.
and kind of like bow over and over again. And that's like a something we clearly don't do here. It's something that we had seen in movies and culture, and it was really fun to kind of learn about our differences and kind of meet each other. It was so fucking fun.
That's awesome. If I had to book if I was a booking agent and was booking a dream tour, I would have you. And do you remember the band Alistair?
I do. Yeah, for sure.
So they played Japan last year when I was I talked to Tim on the show, and he was telling me about just what an incredible experience they have because they have an EP that was like super popular in Japan. So they still when they tour they still play big rooms there.
So cool.
I
That's
would
awesome.
I would want you guys to tour with them, and then the two Japanese bands I would also put on it. I don't know if this is too long of a show or not, but
Hey, this
there.
is your dream show. You can do whatever you want.
So for my dream show, like say I was like an eccentric billionaire, and I was booking my dream concert in my backyard. Uh, I'd have you and I would have Menzingers and Alistair, and then for Japanese bands, they toured with a band called Ella Garden that Tim got me into, who are so good. They're like punk. They're like somewhere in between like uh, punk rock and like a normal like modern rock band. And I'm obsessed with a band called the Winking Owl that are in Japan right now. They're sort of like I would describe them as Paramore with more interesting lead guitar,
All right.
if that makes sense. I kind of wanted to. I feel like I want to ask you a guitar question since you have guitar. Since you have your guitar. Just
That's nice
another
to
like
lean on. So.
yeah. So just like I guess a general something thinking about like because you said you guys are working on new stuff during the quarantine. Um,
Yeah, just trying to stay active as possible. Just kind of have a schedule and go for it.
is there anything that you're working on guitar wise as far as like for your new stuff or anything you're trying to get better at?
Yeah, I'm trying to get better at trying to get better at playing to a metronome by myself. Like we record obviously to a click and we play to drums, but I haven't when practicing scales and some chord changes growing up, I just never um practiced solo with a metronome. So I started doing that last year, and that has immensely improved, especially when doing some of the finger exercises, like even my like pinky strength, or just chord changes, being more on time. That's definitely helped. It's also kind of like a practicing meditation in a way of just putting on the metronome, knowing the exercises, and kind of getting stuck right in it. And that's been pretty cool. And as far as besides anything else, we came up, or at least I came up guitar wise, playing punk rock and like just basically pentatonic scale kind of shit. I
Mm-hmm.
realized I have just terrible guitar posture, and as far as where my fretting hand thumb goes and stuff like that, and I realized that where I've been trying to discipline that more so that I can become better at playing. So that's kind of all I've been working on. That, and I mean, to be real, I just kind of pick up the guitar and play the same fucking shit that I've been doing for 15 years when I first pick it up because it feels good.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like an actual intention of getting better, it's definitely playing to a metronome by myself and getting that thumb in the middle, man.
Totally. That's something I've tried to do, like playing bass, like to not have like a ton of like woofy, like excessive strings rattling around while I'm like trying to play a bass line. That, and I'm trying to, as much as possible, play anything but just do the root note of what the guitar is doing.
Yeah, for sure.
Like
Yeah, man.
that's something I'm trying to focus on. Um, I I'm I have a couple other things I wanted to ask you. We're just coming up on the end here, and Tom,
I got time. Here you go.
I really appreciate you taking time to talk to me because I love your the band's music so much, and so it really means a lot to get to talk with you for in this way. It's means a lot to me, so I really
Hell
appreciate
yeah,
you
dude.
taking
Thanks
the
for having
time
me
to.
on.
No, dude, absolutely, anytime. A couple of things I wanted to ask you. One is, are there any records you're listening to right now that you feel like not enough people know about? Like, what should I go and download after we get off this chat?
Uh, every single record by the Sidekicks.
The Sidekicks, yeah. I
Yeah.
feel like I've heard of them. Did they just? I think were they just the openers for Motion City Soundtrack Store? I think they might have
They
been.
very well could have been. Yeah, they're label mates, I believe, because Sidekicks are on Epitaph with us as well. And they are one of the bands that we've toured with more than any other band out there. We've toured with them so many times. Their most recent record, Happiness Hours, is pretty fucking good. It came out in 2018. I mean, every single one of their records is awesome, but I would definitely listen to that one. And Awkward Breeds is one that I have on constant rotation downstairs where our record player is because the vinyl just it sounds so good, and it's just one my go-to for whatever reason. But yeah, you should definitely check out the Sidekicks. They're a band that is so incredible. Their songs are amazing, and I feel like they do not get the wise recognition they deserve. They play awesome shows. They're fucking incredible live, and they're just one of the best bands out there.
Awesome. I will do a deep dive through their catalog because I just looked at them in my Spotify and they did open for Motion City because I remember like favoriting it right then at the show. I
Nice.
Yeah, they're spectacular. I really enjoyed their set. They had the disco ball turn on during the set and just
Yeah, they would do that.
yeah, just a really incredible time. One other thing, I guess, more on a more personal note, you said that you're engaged. Congratulations! I didn't know that.
Hey, thanks.
Just this is something I've asked before, but more of just like a personal development thing. How do you go about maintaining your relationships when you travel so much?
Technology makes it much easier than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's that Against Me song where he talks about getting into a fight with someone on a payphone at a truck stop. That those days, luckily for us, are kind of gone because of the fact that everybody has a cell phone now. So you could also take that for granted, and it's also not the same kind of connection. You know, you can't really, um, you're not with the person on the cell phone. You can only, you know, talk and FaceTime or whatever. That's I was gonna make. We'll leave it at that. But the
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's important to at least for us and the way that we manage it is to set times and to make the time. So we're like, all right, well, we're gonna talk on this time at this day and get in the headspace to do it. So that's one way to do it. And there's also one of the newer things that we found. So it seems like people oftentimes can get into fights or quibs right before separation or right after a separation because you're both in your own space and you need to get into that same shared living um, space, both literally and figuratively, that you were in before and that you're going to be in after. So we're trying to anchor it with some rituals. So go to the same restaurant. I know some people. A very good friend of mine, actually, out west, goes and stays in a hotel for the first day or two when he gets back from tour, just to transition back into the home life if he's going to be home for a couple of months. So I think that those kind of like rituals, I guess that's essentially what they are. If you have these anchored on these rituals, that it can really kind of remind you and bring you into the headspaces that you need to be in. As far as like maintaining the actual relationship, just talk when you can, and you know, just same shit that you do at home. Buy nice stuff for each other. You know, get her a gift. You know, while you're out there, do something that reminds you of each other.
No, that makes so much sense, the and it goes back to what I was saying before. Like the song Anna made me like miss an Anna that I don't know, but you know, it's just a different name because my fiance, you know, she travels a lot for her job, and then I'm out late at night a lot for my job, or at least we were before this whole thing happened. So
Yeah, before you had to stay at home because there's a global pandemic and you're endangering the healthcare system and other people by leaving your house. In case someone's listening to this after that.
exactly, don't go out unless you don't have to, unless you
Sure.
have to.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, man.
yeah,
Man, talk about a fucking broken record. I feel like everything I've seen or read has been a clamoring for control or semblance of virtuosity to tell people to stay inside. It's like, yeah, yeah, no.
yeah, exactly. I've been making a pretty fair go of it because you know when I was growing up in like small town like rural America, my you know I got my driver's license late and I couldn't walk to any of my friends' houses, so I was just kind of in my room in my head with my imagination,
Yeah.
and and then you know occasionally you know play the PlayStation or you know once I started playing guitar it got easier. So I feel like I'm sort of like getting back into that mindset, but like in my like at 33.
Yeah, right. Uniquely equipped. You can call on the skills that you didn't know that you would need.
Exactly, because my fiance is like born and raised in Brooklyn, so she is not used to not not doing anything.
Sure, yeah.
So we're, uh, but I do know that as soon as this is over, I will make a point to be at your next New York show, Tom. So I'll make sure I will tell you that now. I will be at
Hell
the
yeah, thanks, man.
yeah
Hey, that's if there's one place that we're gonna keep playing uh, until time ends, it's New York. So
awesome and
we'll be back.
sounds good. And what are and where can I go to find out more info about any plans you guys have during the quarantine?
You know, we just it'll be on every single one of our social media outlets. So I guess you could just pick your favorite one. Well, we're very fortunate, and then we have like a system and a team in place where we can kind of just disseminate information very quickly and easily. So, but it would probably be Instagram, and I'm just gonna say that because that's kind of the only social media that I've been following anyone on. So it'll go there first.
Awesome. Well, Tom, thank you so much. I really appreciate you talking to me. I'm gonna turn my camera on real quick, give you a proper farewell here.
Sick. Oh, there you are. What do you know?
Yeah.
Has my camera been on the whole time?
Yes.
That's
The only
amazing.
reason I keep mine off is because I'm trying to like I guess keep the in my mind I'm trying to keep the bandwidth down, but I don't know if that's like actually a thing or not.
Yeah, I would imagine you probably wouldn't hear any. I mean, who fucking knows? You know, we look it up after. But yeah, it's cool to see you. There you go. I didn't. I'm really glad I didn't do anything embarrassing. I assumed that the camera was on when you said that I had my guitar, and I was like, "Shit, can he see me this whole fucking time? God damn! All right."
Well, that was great because I was like, oh my gosh, Tom May is teaching me one of my favorite songs he does. I'll say this: if you and Greg decided like, what if we just teach the internet how to play every single one of our songs? I would sign up for that.
Yeah, hell yeah. That's a good idea. We should put a how-to out there. There's a couple of them that are played completely backwards in non-intuitive ways that we should show people how. I've seen people play covers of our songs on YouTube and fingered the chords and phrases better than I do. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, damn, I should have been playing it that way this whole time. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Well, Tom, thank you again so much for your time, and definitely let like any of your friends that you tour with or Greg know. I would love to chat with them as well. I have nothing but time right now.
Sure.
So
thanks, man. Thanks for having me. Well,
yeah, this has been great, Tom, and I will and hopefully this isn't the only time we chat. So because this has been great.
Great, man. Thanks a lot. Good luck with the rest of the podcasts.
Awesome. Thank you, man, and stay safe. And I'll let you know when I'm going to put this out. Probably next week.
Yeah, man. Hit me up.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom.
Peace out, brother.
Peace. What an excellent conversation. That was a thrill for me. I don't know if it came through, but that was an absolute joy to get to talk to Tom May of the Menzingers. As he said, if you follow the Menzingers on all of their social media platforms, you can be updated on any new releases they have going on or live streams. And man, if they did a guitar thing, how cool would that be? I would definitely want to listen to that. So that's our show for the day. For any Menzingers fans listening to this, thank you for taking the time to listen to this show. This is my own little patch of the internet I'm creating here by myself in my apartment in the midst of a global pandemic. So thank you for taking the time to listen to this. If you enjoyed this and think you know someone else who might, we are available wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Apple. We are on Stitcher. We are on Spotify. And you can also get a free month of Stitcher Premium if you sign up with the promo code AWESOME. That's a way to support the show, and I appreciate that as well. You get hundreds of hours of podcasts and comedy albums, and you can also follow me on Twitter. I'm at Comic Will Carry, and you can follow the podcast on Instagram at Between Awesome and Disaster, all one word. And you can, of course, listen to the Menzingers music wherever you get your music. If you're not familiar, there's a lot. They have every album they've put out has been incredible. So there's a lot of great stuff to listen to. And let me also give a shout out to my friend and supporter on Patreon at the awesome producer level, Mary Beth Mooney. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your support. And if you want to check out anything that I'm doing over on Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/awesomedisaster. Got a lot of stuff that I only put over there. So thank you guys again for listening. I will see some of you at the next Menzingers New York City show, which will be a great thing to look forward to when this is all over. And I will see you guys next time on Between Awesome and Disaster. Stay safe, everybody.